All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How you doing, man? How you feeling? How are you recovering today?
Not great, to be honest. I did Murph yesterday. Things I haven't done it in a while. It was harder than I thought.
If the longer you go without, it's always going to be harder than you think.
Yeah, like you can
I
take
actually
that workout off a pedestal by doing it weekly for a year, like I have done and many in the community. But if you don't do it for a while, it gets right back on that pedestal as something that sucks.
yeah, I actually did Murph practice a week ago, and it was the first time I wore my vest to do like pull-ups and push-ups, and I was definitely feeling it a good bit after. It was not a very fun time, but I knew I needed to do it.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, what are we talking about today, man?
So a lot of people, speaking of recovery, a lot of people in the group in our closed Facebook group have been, I guess they've gotten Garmin's or been playing around with their Garmin's, have noticed this body battery score.
Yeah.
And pretty much every wearable out there has invented or come up with their own recovery score, recovery metric. It's something that they can market. It's something that each of them have their own either algorithms or whatever to tell you, hey, how good are you doing today? And a lot of people, there's several that have gotten body battery scores of like single digits, and the body battery is like 0 to 100. I'll let you go more into that, but that's what we're talking about today. First, we're going to start off with, I mean, Garmin specifically, the body battery, but also just wearables in general, because each of us had four or so different companies of wearables, and they've all had their own score and what we've made of it and how we've treated it.
Yeah. So my very quick wearable history. I had a Whoop for a very long time. We are very early adopters of the Whoop. Like some people are just getting on the Whoop train and like we're off the Whoop train after actually being on the Whoop train for like 2 to 3 years or whatever we stopped. And that's been like 2 years since then. So very early into Whoop. We use that. We both have used Oura rings. I used an Apple Watch for a while, which really isn't in the conversation for recovery stuff. They don't do a good job of that. And then I switched to Garmin, I think in summer of 2020, something like that, or maybe fall of 2020. And I've been a Garmin user ever since. And so we have a lot of experience here. It's not necessarily like we like a particular brand, and so we're talking about them. We don't have sponsors on the podcast, all that jazz. So we just know how each one of these work, and the behind the scenes of it a little bit. So Garmin, you said your Garmin does not have a body battery, right?
Correct. I have the 5X. So before, I guess it started around the 6, they started to have the body battery. And then like, I don't know where their Epics and Vivo Active, the other ones, but I have the Phoenix 5X, which back then, I mean, it's like probably like a 10-year-old watch. So they don't have, it does not equip for body battery.
And I have the 6. Is that
Pro.
right? Yeah. I have the 6 something. And Phoenix, that's what it is, right? Like I think
Phoenix,
that's the word
yeah.
I was looking for.
Yeah.
And they came out with a 7 recently. I didn't know body battery was something that was only for this model, but this model should be getting a lot cheaper with the release of their 7. You should be able to get like the different versions and everything. But I absolutely love the body battery. And this is coming from someone who's used Oura Ring, who's used Whoop. I think Garmin body battery surpasses every other recovery score platform out there. And it gets like almost no love, like marketing, like anything. Like I didn't even know it was there until after I got the watch. And I was like, oh, this is a cool extra feature. But I've never seen something coincide so well with what I'm actually going through in life and the workout and its correlation to an actual poor or good recovery score. Like Whoop, I honestly felt like it was roll of the dice. It was like I could do everything right, pure recovery session. I'm not sore at all. I'm feeling great. I wake up the next day. I have no stressors in my life. And they're like, oh, you're in the yellow or red. Maybe take it easy. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's why I kind of got away from Whoop. I felt like it was not very accurate and pretty like gimmicky at times and just didn't seem to truly coincide with how I was actually feeling. But that's the exact opposite with the Garmin body battery. Now, I've done some research, not extensive research, on what goes into the Garmin body battery, but they don't reveal as much information as like Whoop does on what goes into the recovery score. Garmin doesn't. But it does have to do with all the typical stuff like heart rate, resting heart rate variability. I think they might throw in respiration in there and all these kind of things. And then they give you a body battery. And typically, if you're recovering well, most days I wake up, I'd say 95% of the time I wake up at 100% body battery, unless I've had some really hard, stressful stuff going on. And then it slowly ticks away throughout the day as they monitor your stress levels and resting heart rate. Yeah, all those things. And so some of the hardest days I've had in the last, whatever, let's say 2 years since I've been wearing it, are these business events that I go to that I'm actually hosting. I do twice a year. And that the first day of those events are the same every time. We wake up 4 or 5 a.m. We do the EO3 5K, very tough workout. And then after that, we're doing stuff from, so let's say 4 a.m. until around 11 p.m. that night. I'm presenting on stage for a lot of that day, interacting with guests. It's a very, let's just say, like stressful environment, like to be presenting on stage on a daily basis. And then also kicking it off with a ridiculously hard workout. So anyway, the reason I'm telling you all this is because on those days and those days alone, they happen for me twice a year, every year. My body battery gets down to like 3 or 4 on those days because I'm not as in control of my hydration, my nutrition. It's very stressful mentally, and that stress is caused in my body and can be read through the Garmin body battery. And I'm doing a really hard workout in which I'm getting almost no sleep before I get to the second day. So I have very little time to recover. And so it's very cool to see that how well it works. And I've seen that over and over again. And
Does
so
it
that
change
is
throughout the day? Or is it like a recovery score? Just like you wake up and that's it for the day. It doesn't change throughout the day.
no, like, so it starts at 100. And then really for me, it's just like, it just goes down all day.
Okay.
Like, so it's like you need to go recharge. Like you need to go plug yourself in, AKA sleep is how it works. And so it doesn't always start at 100. Like some days I didn't sleep well or whatever. I'll be at like worst case scenario, like 85 to 90, 95 sometimes. Most of the time I'm waking up at 100 and then it just ticks away. And then I typically end most of my days in the 20s. I feel like just an average day for me is like 20 to 30. And then really hard days, I'm getting into those single digits. But anyway, it's a really cool thing. It uses a lot of the same metrics Whoop does and Aura does. There's not a lot more these companies can measure, but for some reason, I feel like their accuracy is off the charts. From like, if you woke me up in the morning and you were like, how recovered do you feel? And I wrote that on paper, it'd probably match what Garmin is actually reading. And then at the end of the day, be like, okay, based off of your stress and your training, hydration, nutrition, where would you rate your energy level on a score of 0 to 100? It'd probably be pretty close to what the Garmin body battery reads. So it's very, very accurate in that regard.
That's interesting. I didn't know that it changed throughout the day because all the wearables that I have, you wake up, you get your score, and that's your score for the day, and then you won't really get another score until the following day. And while I guess Whoop has the closest thing to where you have your, I guess it was strain score. I forget what
strain score. Yeah,
that was for the day and for workouts. But then you also they also gave you like a percentage or something for how you felt that day. So you saw your recovery score for that day, but then you had a separate, okay, your daily strain score and your workout strain, and but that didn't affect your recovery for that day. So that's kind of the closest thing of like, okay, if you're at this recovery and this is how much strain you have, then maybe kind of think of what you need to do to stay recovered to be better for your recovery score the next day. For my 5X, all I have is like the training status, which is only just like they give you just like a title of productive, unproductive, detraining. And it's like I never even pay attention to that because there'll be times where I'll work out like 7 days in a row and I feel great and I'm doing great. And it's like, you're a detraining or you're unproductive. It's like, well, I'm actually not unproductive right now, but that's okay.
I'm getting it done. Yeah.
Yeah. I do wish there was a way, and I don't know if are you wearing your Garmin to bed?
Yep.
Okay. See, I only wear my Aura ring now to bed. Now since I have that. So the metrics that Garmin has, it has my resting heart rate at like 20 beats higher now because it only gets my heart rate when I'm like awake doing things instead of like asleep. And I wish there was a way for Aura and Garmin to like share data or something of that nature. Anyway, so yeah, I've going back to my wearables, I guess. I also did the Apple Watch and Whoop and Aura and Garmin. When I was doing Whoop, we would notice and we talked about this in the past, like the recovery score that they give you, even when I was in the red, I wouldn't necessarily pay attention to it, depending on how I was feeling. I would more so look at the resting heart rate or heart variability, but more so the resting heart rate. With Aura now, I feel like its accuracy is probably the better ones that I've seen and that I've felt. There's definitely days where I feel way more tired, but that it still gives me like in the 70s or almost 80 in a readiness score. That's what they have, a readiness score. But then I like with theirs that even if they give you a readiness score, like if you get a lot of sleep, you might get a pretty decently high, like a 75 readiness score. But then if one of your metrics are off, it'll say, hey, you have a great readiness, but we noticed your body temperature is high, or that your resting heart rate didn't drop until late last night. So maybe do something, but maybe don't go too hard. And while I don't always necessarily listen to the advice, I think they're pretty dang close on how I would actually feel and rate myself. And there's times where obviously I look at it in the morning and I'm like, man, I'm still tired, but it's actually closer to accurate than I would think, than like what I ever felt what the Whoop was like. And obviously Garmin doesn't really do that much. So it's definitely a mixture of how much you trust what, like you have to wear some of these for a while to see, okay, how do I feel? How does it reflect on there? And then not just look at the score that they give you, but what each of the elements are. So I look at my respiratory rate and my body temperature every day, my resting heart rate. Those three things I look at every day to see how I'm doing. And if one or two of them have spiked, then I might think about well, not only like how I feel, but think about reordering my workouts for that day to do something that's maybe not as crazy, not as intense, because reordering days during the week isn't a big deal. And then whenever I'm feeling great, I make sure to hit one of those better or harder workouts because I know that I'm ready for it. So in case I need to pull out a easier day later on, then I have those. So that's kind of how I treat mine. I definitely am more interested in, I will be by the end of the year, probably by July, I will have a new Garmin, probably the 7, I think is only going to get, because they also have not only the body battery, but they have I forgot what it's called, like a stamina meter now. So like while you're working out, it's almost like a body battery, but during a workout.
I think
So like
mine. No, I don't think I have that.
yeah, I'm sure they'll roll it. They usually whenever they come out with that, they'll have it for like exclusively the new ones for like the first, I don't know, 6-9 months to a year, and then they can roll it back to ones that were applicable. So I'm sure the 6s, because it's not very old, they'll make those available, which I think is kind of cool. Even though I don't know how much I would listen to it, but it would be interesting to see, to be like, oh, hey, your stamina is at 75 now. Let's go to a run and see how much it drops.
I mean, it's got a lot of cool features, to be honest. I'm not using, like the Pace Pro is like really cool. Like if you're running up a hill, it'll adjust your pace like in real time because it knows the elevation. So like if say I wanted to run 5 miles in X amount of time, and then I hit a hill, you're supposed to slow. Like you can't just be like, okay, maintain that 7-minute mile, run faster.
Yeah.
It'll be like, no, like bump. You're going up a hill, bump it up to 820, for this duration, and then going downhill, you can go faster, like bump it down to a 645 or whatever, So it's got a lot of cool stuff. But going back to recovery, Aura, I feel like Aura is almost like too stingy with giving out their high scores, but they are very accurate, like you're saying. I know when I first started wearing the Aura, I don't typically eat past like 7 p.m. or whatever, and I ate one night at like 8:30, and then I went to bed at 9, and the app, I opened it up, it literally asked me that the next day. It was like, did you eat late last night? And I was like, what are you? Like, how do you know brother. That? Yeah, because it notices like a higher resting heart rate than typical. And that's really like one of the only reasons, that or drinking alcohol are about the only reasons they could come up with for like that happening, unless you're getting sick or something else. So if I had to rate these companies, I would kind of put it in 2 categories. It's like accuracy and marketing budget. and marketing effectiveness. So I would say Garmin, for me, this is just for me, is like at the top for like accuracy on this recovery stuff. And then marketing, they suck. They're like, I think Garmin makes money in so many different ways. They don't care that much about the Phoenix 6 or 7. They do what they can and they sell a lot of them. They're not hurting for money by any stretch, but we all know Garmin. Like Garmin does so many different things, but they're actually doing the wearable thing really well. And so I don't think that a ton of their marketing dollars are going towards specifically these watches, whereas like Whoop and Aura, that's all they do. And somehow I still feel like Garmin's beating them out and it's not even like their sole thing that they're doing. Second place, I would have Aura and accuracy, and then put them like in the middle for like marketing budget and all this other stuff. But they are still like way super reliable and have a lot of like accuracy. But Whoop, I put them the lowest on my accuracy and like usefulness, but the absolute highest on like marketing effectiveness. They did like what they got Patrick Mahomes, like every CrossFit Games athlete. Tom Brady's probably wearing one right now. Like they crushed it with getting the proper professional athletes and influencers to wear these things. So it makes people think that things that I'm saying about Whoop are unfounded stupidity because Patrick Mahomes is wearing one, right? But in reality, like wear one for a while and then wear these other two products that we're talking about and you'll see for yourself. And I'm not here to just like crap on Whoop. It's just like funny how like sometimes marketing can outpace the actual efficacy of a product. I don't think that Whoop is doing as good of a job as Oura Ring or Garmin, but they have a much better maybe app and they have a lot more. They spent a lot more money. I don't even know if they actually have any more money. Actually, I think I heard somewhere Whoop is valued at like $3 billion or something like that now. Yeah, something crazy.
They must have like patents on heart rate monitoring or something.
Well, yeah, and they're crushing it. So anyway, Whoop is pretty. I mean, Garmin's a massive company as well, but I just think that they're not doing a great job overall on. It's just not that useful, man. Like other than like drinking a bunch of alcohol and going to sleep, I've never noticed like, which is not something I do regularly, but like if I had like 2 or 3 beers, like back when I first started wearing this 4 years ago, I would notice my sleep was crappy. That was like something I picked up on. I was like, oh, cool. Wow, this is real. But then when it gets into the nuances, if you're not training 5 times a day or whatever, like I don't feel like it picks up on normal life stress. Cause I remember having some like just ridiculously stressful days, like with kids moving, all this crap. And then the next day they'd be like, you're great, 97%. And I'd be like, bullshit. I feel awful. Like that's like this is the most stressful time period of my life right now. At that time. And then likewise, I remember, I'll never forget, we did like one of our Spartan races and I woke up the next day in the green and I was like, I felt like I couldn't move. And they were like, good to go. I'm like, I'm glad my heart rate variability is good, but my muscles feel like they're going to fall off my body, so I don't know how accurate you are, Whoop. But then again, Whoop's been right. Like one night I threw up from food poisoning for like 8 hours and slept for like 45 minutes. And they gave me a 6% readiness in the red. Well, thank you. Yeah, that one I agree with. So anyway, I feel like most of the time it was just so middle of the road and like sporadic and didn't really pick up on any life stressors or training stressors to any serious degree. And maybe they've changed. Maybe I should get their 9.0 or whatever they're on now. But Whoop is not on my high on my list anymore of like actual usefulness in recovery, because I did Murph yesterday. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. I'm really sore today because I haven't been doing Murph. I did it with a vest and I'm just pretty sore. The triceps are sore. My legs are sore, nothing crazy. And that's about all I need to say, you know what? Maybe today is the day I will do more of a cardio conditioning session instead of squatting heavy weight when my legs are sore. Maybe I'll just make that adjustment. I don't need a wearable to help me make those adjustments. And I don't think people really need wearables to make those adjustments either. So yeah, that's a long tangent on wearables and recovery, but that's all I got.
Yeah. And I mean, for the specific people that were talking about their body battery being low, It could matter depending on how long you're wearing it, because
Well, I'd
like
be interested. Did he say it was happening like every day?
I don't think there's a couple people that have said theirs have been in the single digits, but I didn't know that it changes over time throughout the day. So like according to you, it's pretty normal if after you're training and if you're trained, depending on when you're training and toward the end of the day, like to get into the single digits makes sense. But if you're
Yeah, like
waking
at
up
the
with it, then that's completely different.
if you have a fairly stressful job, like I said, I normally end my days like in the 20s, like a little bit harder of a day. Let's just say stress wise, like actual stress, like people have stress in their jobs. Maybe it's in the teens. To knock it all the way down to the single digits for me is pretty hard to do. That's like burn it to the ground, 20-hour day type thing. But that could just be the same for this individual. You know, maybe pretty stressful job, stressful training. You're not recovering as well as you could. You need to sleep a little bit more. These are all things that need to be factored in. But you make a few adjustments. I mean, I'm normally pretty happy with ending the day in the teens, because that's like, if I ended a day in the 40s, which I've done like a few times, I didn't really do that much that day. You know, it was like a day where like maybe the kids like spent the night at the grandparents' house and like we didn't do a lot and I worked out, and that was like the whole day. And I'm like, well, I feel like I did nothing. Like, why did I just waste that Saturday? So yeah, I want to feel spent at the end of most of my days to some degree, but I think that you could get those recovery scores back up through some pretty simple adjustments to lifestyle parameters.
Definitely be interested once I get a new Garmin, because it's going to happen in the next couple of months. Maybe I'll start a GoFundMe or something. But it'll be interesting just to compare with Aura, and I'll have to wear it, you know, around the clock. But I think it's smaller than my 5X anyway. So
I'm interested in trying the Aura when they finally release their workout tracking. They say that it's coming in 2022. I might try Aura again once that happens. That was the main reason Aura couldn't be an all-in-one for me. And so it was great for the recovery and sleep stuff, but I want something that can, like if Aura's like, yeah, we can track calories in your workout now, that would help with my like 303 challenge right now, right? So I'd be all about it. I mean, I could grab things with the ring on. I'll be fine. What? I won't break it.
I usually when I wake up in the morning, as I'm making coffee, I take the ring off and I just throw it on the charger, and I'm done until I go to bed.
I'd get used to it. I'd scratch it up and hopefully I don't break it, but yeah.
Could be interesting though.
All right, well, that's it. Recovery score stuff. Definitely go check these things out. Like we've kind of talked about this on the podcast. Like I feel like I'm kind of at the end of my life cycle of smart watches in general. I think I'm kind of like about done with them, and it's not out of frustration. It's not because they're not useful. They're amazing tools. But I don't mean I'm done like probably forever. I just want to do like a year of like just going back to an Ironman or like whatever, and just tracking this stuff a little bit more like, you know, subjectively, you know, through how I'm feeling and all this stuff, and not always relying on data. You know, I feel like I've actually gotten really good at that. And I think it's through having these wearables for several years and paying attention and not just like being surprised by these things. So I think it trains you to learn how to focus more on recovery, what you should do, shouldn't do. And then, you know, go from there. But I think if you don't know if you're like not in tune with your body at all, get one of these and it'll reveal a lot to you. It almost doesn't matter which one. You'll learn a lot about your body and all your metrics and stuff.
And I'm sure Polar has something similar, but we don't know anything about Polar. It's not a Garmin.
Yeah, we don't.
We got nothing Polar.
Sorry, guys. Polar's great. I've heard a lot of great things about Polar.
And don't even bother with Fitbit.
Well, I actually have had a Polar, but the model I had was from it was my very first heart rate monitor, and it was a Polar, probably 2004, 2005. So nobody wants to hear my thoughts on Polar from 2004, because how useful is that to anybody? I'm sure they've done amazing things since then. All right, well, we'll get out of here. Keep the conversations going in the Facebook group. We love to chime in on these things, try and help people out and give some insight where we can, when we can. So you can keep posting in the Facebook group. This is primarily for all the Garage Gym athletes who are subscribed to our programming. We have a private Facebook group and an amazing community there. If anybody does want to join that, you can go to garagegymathlete.com and sign up for a free trial. If you're like if this episode was something you liked and you're not a member of our programming, you should be, because this is kind of like how we do it. We're all about data, metrics, science, nerding out on stuff a little bit, you know, a lot of mindset stuff. So hop in if you're not already. And if you are already one of our members, you know, thank you so much. You can also go to garagedymathlete.com and submit questions or topics for the podcast, and we will definitely get to it. But that's it for this one, guys. If you're watching on YouTube right now, subscribe to the channel. We always have new stuff coming out. You'll get notified right away if you are subscribed. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment. We really appreciate that. And if you are listening to this podcast, go ahead, 5-star review and a positive comment helps us out a lot in any of your podcast players. We would appreciate it. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching or listening. For listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.